Welcome to Technical Leadership Talks, the podcast that brings you advice, insights, and knowledge from industry leaders and experts on how to navigate managing in a technical field. Technical Leadership Talks is brought to you by Texas A&M University's Master of Engineering Technical Management, an online graduate program that trains industry professionals for leadership positions. In today's episode, METM's founding director, Dr. Ben Zoghi, is talking to Texas A&M University's first woman president, Dr. Elsa Murano, the current director of the Norman Borlaug Institute for International Agriculture and Development. Today, they are speaking about Dr. Murano's leadership journey and her guidance to women in leadership.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here with Dr. Elsa Murano, who is the director of the Norman Borlaug Institute for International Agriculture and Development. Thank you very much, Elsa, for visiting with me.
It's my pleasure, Dr. Zoghi. Really is amazing to be able to have this opportunity. Thank you.
I have a few questions that I'd like to go over, and the purpose of the visit is to learn from your leadership journey, and hopefully we can pass those to the next generation of men and women. So the first question that I have is if you could explain your career background, since not everybody knows you. If they're Aggie, they should know you since you were a 23rd president. But I'll let you go ahead and give us a little background about Dr. Murano.
Sure, you bet. Well, without going too long here, just to tell you that I began my career as a faculty member at Iowa State University. I was focused on conducting research and teaching in food safety. I had earned a PhD from Virginia Tech, so I'm a Hokie, in food science and technology. And at that time, food safety had become a huge issue, mainly because of outbreaks of foodborne illness that had made national news from consumption mainly of contaminated beef. So I immediately focused on getting to know other faculty at Iowa State with whom I could collaborate. I was very young, right out of graduate school. And it resulted really in several very successful projects that ultimately helped me earn tenure 1 year ahead of schedule. And I was then recruited to Texas A&M University, where I became director of their Center for Food Safety, as well as a faculty member in food science and technology. Well, due to accomplishments in securing several large grants, as well as other activities that I pursued to try to engage with stakeholders regarding the need for food safety research, the Commissioner of Agriculture at that time, Susan Combs, recommended me to the White House so that I would serve as Undersecretary for Food Safety, which is a Senate-confirmed position in Washington, D.C., at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Well, in the 3.5 years that I was in D.C., and you know what they tell you about D.C., if you want a friend, get a dog, okay? It's a tough place, all right? Well, my team and I were able to bring science to solve a myriad of challenges that resulted in great improvements in the safety of meat and poultry products. So after those 3.5 years, I returned to Texas A&M, where I was appointed Vice Chancellor and Dean of Agriculture and Life Sciences, which I served for 3 years in that position, and then as president of the university. And then, of course, followed by director of the Norman Borlaug Institute for International Agriculture, as Dr. Zoghi just said, for which I have had the privilege of serving since 2012.
You had a stellar background in leadership positions, from academia to Washington, D.C., back to the largest agriculture program in the country, and being our first lady president. Who inspired you to be a leader?
Well, my gosh, I can tell you without hesitation, my mother. She taught me that in life, whatever you do, you have to focus on good results. To always be looking at what you can do to make things better. Not for me, but for people in general. And so throughout my career, I observed leaders, as we all do, those who are good, those who are not so good, at getting results. And so I learned from observation, as well as practice, but a lot from observation, that it's about being focused on a goal. It's about having people around you who are smarter than you are in your team, okay, to help you come up with strategies that will help achieve that goal. And the main thing my mother taught me, that it's about being perseverant, about never giving up. It's about adjusting when you need to adjust, but continuing to move forward no matter what. And that is the crux of my leadership philosophy.
Wow. Well, Texas A&M has a rich history of having great leaders. Primarily, they were old men as our president. Yeah. So you are our first lady president, first Hispanic. What really motivated you to step up?
Well, excellent.
To take that responsibility.
Yeah. Great question. Well, I will tell you very, very honestly, I never thought or planned to be president of any university, let alone this great university. What happened is that there had been a search for a new president of Texas A&M when President Robert Gates left to become Secretary of Defense. Now, that search for a new president was not successful, and I was serving already as Vice Chancellor and Dean of Agriculture. And because of the great things that we, and I mean we because it was my team, okay, that we were accomplishing in the agriculture program, like we reversed our declining enrollment in the college, we engaged with both the public and the private sector to significantly increase our funding, improve the efficiency of our programs. Because of all of that, I was asked by the Board of Regents at that time, different people than what we have today, if I could please take on the role of president of the university. Well, my motivation was to do, frankly, whatever I could to not only ensure that the reputation of Texas A&M would continue to shine, but that we would excel in our programs so that our national rankings among public universities would increase. Because at that time, we had not gotten any higher than 24th in public universities. So by working with my deans, to identify the issues, to seek promising solutions, we actually went up to 21st in just 1 year, which was amazing. And so we thought, well, the sky's the limit, keep going.
So being the first lady president, did you receive or felt any gender-specific resistance? And if you did, how did you tackle it? How did you overcome those?
Well, as you can imagine, Dr. Zoghi, throughout my entire career, I've always been looked at by some people with a certain doubtful look on their face. Almost as if they're thinking, really? This little Cuban woman is in charge? Because I'm barely 5 feet tall, as you know. So I always would smile to myself whenever I meet people like that and then say, okay, just watch me, pal. Okay? And that was certainly the way some people saw me when I first became president. Again, it just made me work that much harder, knowing that, frankly, ultimately, results are what counts. And people who may have had doubts about my abilities would certainly be able to see that being a woman was, if anything, a positive factor because we are hard workers and we're focused and we are self-sacrificing and we do whatever it takes for the betterment of everybody else. In fact, I will tell you a funny story. When I first became president, I decided to go visit the president of the University of Texas, President Bill Powers, because I wanted to see if he would join me in developing a strategy to convince the Texas legislature at the time to increase the funding for research for our two universities. So I figured if we go at it together, we'd have better chance to succeed. So anyway, when I got to their campus there in Austin, his assistant greeted me, and as she walked me to his office, she said that they were actually very upset when they learned about my being appointed president of Texas A&M. So I said, why? And she said, because we thought we would be the first ones to have a woman president, and you guys beat us to it. And I was like, yes, giga Maggies. Okay. So yeah, I've had many situations where people have kind of looked at me and wondered, is she going to make it? Is she for real? Can she do this? And then that inspires me to show them. And so far, it's worked.
Well, you may be 5 feet tall, but you are a solid role model to myself and other faculty at Texas A&M and many men and women. I really want to know how you build that level of confidence and resiliency throughout your life.
Well, I'll tell you, confidence is built when you get good results. Nothing builds it more than results. And the same is true for resilience, because the more you're able to withstand challenges and overcome them, the more perseverant you become, the more you are convinced that no challenge can defeat you if you continue to focus and work hard toward your goals. It's easier said than done, but it's absolutely what has worked for me throughout my career.
Now, reflecting back on your leadership experience, what has been the hardest leadership decision that you have ever had to make?
Well, this is a tough one. where the rubber meets the road, as they say. Well, decisions can be easy, but they can be hard. It depends on the complexity or the difficulty of carrying out a decision, which certainly includes resistance that you may have to face when you make a decision. So one thing I've learned in my career is that reasonable people can be reasoned with. So even when you make a decision that some people won't like, and that's typically the case, not everyone likes everything that you decide. But when you make a decision that some people won't like, if they are reasonable and you explain to them with data and facts why this is necessary, then they'll accept it even if they're not crazy about it. Now, unreasonable people, on the other hand, no matter the evidence you present, they'll never go along with it. So I've had to make hard decisions through my career. When I was undersecretary in Washington, D.C., for example, we enacted some regulations that some people were not in support of, in spite of the evidence presented. So the regulations proved to be absolutely successful in the end, significantly reducing outbreaks and meat product recalls. And we were able to reach the Healthy People 2010 goals of the Centers for Disease Control 6 years ahead of schedule. So those who had not been in support of our decisions eventually admitted that it had been, in fact, the right thing to do. So, it works. Eventually, people will come to the conclusion when you make decisions in the right way. Well, having said that, and to answer your question directly, the hardest leadership decision I've had to make was when I decided to step down as president of Texas A&M and return to my faculty position. Well, at that time, and it's been, quite a while ago, an external group had proposed that Texas universities, not just Texas A&M, but all Texas universities, needed to split teaching from research so that faculty would either do one or the other, but not both. So I knew right away that such a move would absolutely change us in a very negative way, because for one, we would lose our best faculty. They would leave. Our students would not get the benefit of being taught by people who were at the top of their scientific field as researchers. Now, another awful idea was to do away with tenure altogether, which again would absolutely decimate our national standings. Our faculty would leave. It would absolutely destroy Texas A&M. So I met with faculty leadership groups, with student leadership groups, with alumni, with external stakeholders, and certainly with my senior staff. And after analyzing the pros and the cons, it was clear that we could not support such initiatives. Now, other universities in the state also protested. University of Texas certainly stood up against it. But unfortunately, at that time, my superiors were supportive of these radical ideas. So after I tried to no avail to convince them, provide them the evidence and all the facts that I had gathered through all of my meetings, I ultimately offered my resignation in hopes that this would demonstrate the seriousness of the opposition. And the faculty were very supportive of me. Well, a year later, after a change in leadership at the top of the system, the proposed changes were dropped. So we succeeded. But looking back, of course, it was the right thing to do, but it didn't come without a sacrifice. And it's the kind of thing that you have to say always to yourself, can I put my head on the pillow at night and sleep well because of decisions that I've made, because they're the right decisions for the right reasons? And if the answer is yes, then you have to proceed and you can live with it a lot better.
I vividly remember when you made that decision. I remember, that there were groups, who wanted to divide us between teaching and research without understanding what higher education is. So even though you sort of paid for it, but a lot of us will never forget it, and we're very thankful of you.
Well, thank you.
I want to know your previous roles, how you balance different constituent groups while trying to maintain your focus on your goals and results.
Well, it's not easy, okay? But there are certain principles that have worked for me, okay? And if I had to bring it down to 3, it's inclusivity or being inclusive, transparency, and objectivity in making decisions, okay? That means talking to people, internal and external stakeholders, showing them the data, sharing possible solutions and the reasons why these would be the best case scenario, but being absolutely open to new ideas and new perspectives. Nobody is all-knowing, so any ideas you may have should be open for discussion and for debate even. Every group has their own opinions, and that's just great, but facts are facts, as we all need to make sure that we understand the situation, consider the potential consequences, positive and negative, analyze the probabilities of each consequence becoming reality. It's basically a scientific approach to leadership and to listening to people and listening to the facts. As a leader, you have to be open-minded enough to change your mind based on what people tell you. And in fact, one of the best pieces of advice I was given when I was president at A&M was from a distinguished professor of psychology, of all things. He said to me, "Dr. Murano, my advice to you is that whenever you get an idea to do something, immediately tell your staff, tell others about it. Don't sit thinking about it for several days, because if you do that, and when you then share it with other people, if they have any criticisms of it, you'll get very upset because it's your baby at that time. But if you tell your idea right away and people give you reasons as to, well, this is not going to work because of these reasons, you'll be ready to say, okay, you're right, let's move on." So very, very important to be so open-minded, enough to change your mind. Now, once you make a decision based on facts and everybody's thoughtful opinion, you have to explain it so that those who may disagree can at least understand why you've decided something, because they were originally included in the discussion, will know that their viewpoints were included in the decision, even if the decision is not what they necessarily wanted. I'll give you a good example is the MSC. When we needed to renovate it, everybody was ready to do it, but the architects told me that there was asbestos in the old parts of the building, and that by doing the renovation, all that asbestos was going to be floating through the air, and if we did not close down the campus completely or the MSC completely, people going to parts of the building that would be open might be exposed to the asbestos. So I made the decision based on those facts that we needed to close down the MSC completely during the renovation. A lot of people did not like that. They wanted to have part of the MSC still open. So I did my best at explaining it, met with all the different people, all the groups of students, etc. And ultimately, not only did it get done quicker than it would have. Nobody got hurt, nobody got cancer as a result, and people could see that it was the right decision at that time. So again, reasonable people can be reasoned with, even if they don't like the decision, because at least they were heard, truly heard, not just to check a box that you met with them, and they will accept it. Unreasonable people cannot be reasoned with. So as a leader, you have to just accept that and hope that when the results of the decision prove that you made the right one, they will become convinced.
What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
I tell you, when I was 25 years old, I was in graduate school, okay? And my plan was to be a scientist, work as a faculty member at a university. That's all I thought about. I never thought for a fraction of a second that I would end up working in the U.S. government to develop food safety regulations. Never mind becoming an administrator, dean, vice chancellor, president of a major university. And I never thought I would end up working in the international arena, as I've been doing over the last 12 years at the Borlaug Institute. So I think I would tell my 25-year-old self to, get out of your comfort zone, okay? Realize that there's a lot of things out there that you may not even be aware of, so meet people. Get out of your comfort zone. But focus on achieving positive results, and although sometimes things don't go the way we want them, know that perseverance is what counts, as long as your ultimate goal is to help people, not for your own personal gain, but to do something for the people around you, for the organization, for the betterment of society. And if you focus on that, you can't fail.
And the last question is related to any encouragement, any last words you have for any women seeking leadership opportunities and they're listening to this podcast, considering your academic background, your leadership background in Washington, D.C., in College Station, a lot of it was based on performance, not gender. But I'm sure you have a little encouragement for young women who are listening to the podcast.
No, you bet. And I would say, first and foremost, don't ever give up. If someone underestimates you, take it as a challenge to show them. Laugh at them and say, yeah, you think I can't do it? Wait, I'll show you. And ultimately, know that life is short. So don't let anyone or anything discourage you from doing stuff that matters, that has longevity beyond your lifetime, that actually makes a change for the better. If that is your goal, that is what pushes you along, you'll succeed. And you may, life is not fair. That's okay. Again, you say to yourself, fine, I'll show you. I may have to work harder than the next person, but I'll show you. And the more that all of us do that, I think the more people realize that, the preconceived notions about women or men or whatever it may be, are not necessarily the case. We are each individuals, and we need to be treated that way and considered as individuals and unique in this planet.
Thank you for listening in to today's episode. Tech Leadership Talks is brought to you by Texas A&M University's Master of Engineering Technical Management. To learn more, visit metm.tamu.edu.